It was 7:42 p.m. on a rainy Thursday in Seattle when I opened the email. Not a new one, an old one. The kind of message you don't revisit unless you're trying to convince yourself that you're not crazy, that you did everything right, that you weren't just imagining it. The subject line was painfully clinical. Performance-based compensation proposal Q1 review. Sent exactly 184 days ago. Still unread. I hovered over it. I didn't click. I just stared, heart pounding louder than the hum of the fluorescent lights above me. That email had taken me 4 days to write. Not because I was demanding, but because I wanted it to be fair, documented, justified. I had pulled industry averages, listed our competitors' salary brackets, attached quarterly performance metrics showing I had retained over 93% of high-value accounts. I wasn't just asking for more. I was proving why I'd earned it. But the CEO, Ethan Cole, had never responded. Never even opened it. That's the thing about corporate cruelty. It doesn't always come with shouting or pink slips. Sometimes it arrives dressed in silence, a silence so precise, so deliberate, it cuts cleaner than any knife. I wasn't new. I wasn't lazy. I wasn't entitled. I was Helen Shaw, 49 years old, senior brand strategist at Bright Peak Collective. And for nearly a decade, I'd been the invisible scaffolding holding this agency together. I wasn't on the billboards, but I was behind every campaign that kept our doors open. My biggest client, Naturatech, a health tech giant, accounted for 38% of our annual revenue. I had onboarded them, nurtured them, saved 3 of their launches from disaster. They didn't call me strategist. They called me translator. I spoke their chaos into clarity, their maybes into measurable success. And still, I sat there, 6 months later, watching a ghost of an email float on my screen like a weightless betrayal. I leaned back, hand trembling slightly as I reached for the cold cup of chamomile tea beside me. The office was nearly empty now, only the night janitor humming somewhere down the hall, and the sound of rain tapping against the glass like a metronome reminding me, "You're still here. You're still waiting." The worst part wasn't the money. It never was. I lived modestly. My car was a decade old. My blouses, carefully pressed, had seen many seasons. What I wanted, what I needed, was to be seen, to be acknowledged, just once. Instead, I became a fixture in my own office. Not a person, a placeholder. It had started subtly, a missed invitation here, a rescheduled meeting there. Then one afternoon, during a Friday team sync, the CEO's assistant, a fresh-faced MBA grad named Lindsay Huang, laughed and said casually, "Oh, Ethan said those kinds of emails aren't top priority right now." Everyone chuckled. I didn't. I smiled, nodded, swallowed hard. And in that moment, I realized something I hadn't wanted to admit before. This wasn't an oversight. This was a message. They weren't just ignoring me. They were slowly erasing me. And I had 2 choices. Disappear quietly, or let this silence become the beginning of something louder than they could ever imagine. The next time I walked into the conference room, Lindsay was sitting in my seat. My seat, the one I had always taken, 3rd from the left, closest to the dry erase board because I liked to sketch frameworks during brainstorms. Ethan didn't even glance up. He simply motioned toward the far end of the table and said, "Lindsay's leading this one. Fresh energy. Fresh energy." That was his phrase of the season. It sounded like a sparkling water ad. I nodded, said nothing. I walked across the room, each step heavy, like the air had thickened just for me. I took the seat he indicated, 2 chairs down from where I had always belonged, and opened my notebook as if nothing had shifted. But everything had. Lindsay began the meeting by reading from a script I had written during her onboarding 2 months ago, word for word. She mispronounced the client's name, stumbled over the campaign terminology, but no one corrected her. Ethan smiled and nodded, arms folded like a mentor who just discovered the next big thing. And everyone else, They averted their eyes, the way people do when they sense a slow-motion tragedy unfolding but don't want to be caught watching. I sat through it all. Every stutter, every hollow pitch. I didn't interrupt, didn't interject. Not because I wasn't qualified, but because I knew then, truly knew, they had already made their choice. This wasn't about growth. It wasn't mentorship. It was succession. Silent, strategic, and sanitized. One by one, I began to notice the shifts. Emails that used to come directly to me were now addressed to team. Projects I had initiated were being reimagined with new leads. Client meetings were scheduled at times I couldn't attend, then followed up with recap memos that subtly omitted my contributions. Then it happened. I received a calendar invite. Subject line, Delamar account transition brief. I froze. Delamar had been my account for 4 years. I'd brought them in during the midst of a merger crisis. I'd soothed their panicked CEO, rebuilt their brand identity from scratch, and coached their communications director through a public product failure. And now they were being reassigned to Lindsay. No explanation, no heads up, just a clean line of digital ink spelling my erasure. I walked straight to Ethan's office, knocked once, entered. He was sipping some artisanal cold brew, scrolling through reports. Was there a reason for the Delamar shift? I asked, tone calm but clipped. I wasn't looped in. He looked up, face blank as a polished marble countertop. Lindsay's portfolio needs growth. She needs real-world accounts under her belt. I'm sure you understand. I stared at him for a beat, then said evenly, I do. I just hope Delamar does too. He chuckled, a thin, dismissive sound that didn't reach his eyes. They'll be fine. It's just logistics. But it wasn't, and we both knew it. This was no longer just about ignoring a raise. It was about replacing me, task by task, seat by seat, identity by identity, until the only thing left of me would be a name on archived email chains. That night, I sat in my car in the dark parking garage. I didn't drive. I didn't cry right away. I just stared at the dashboard, letting the truth settle in like cold fog on glass. They were phasing me out, not with layoffs or accusations, but with indifference. And yet, I still showed up the next morning, not because I was loyal, not because I was weak, but because I wasn't done yet. The Monday of the Q3 alignment meeting arrived with heavy skies and heavier silence. The office buzzed with its usual nervous energy. Cheap coffee, half-hearted greetings, and the unmistakable undertone of something shifting. The calendar invite had said, all strategic team leads mandatory. But I wasn't a team lead anymore, at least not officially. Still, I showed up. I wore my navy blazer, the one with the structured shoulders that made me feel like I still mattered, and stepped into the conference room like I had every quarter for 9 years. Not one person greeted me. They glanced and looked away, the kind of look you give a colleague you think won't be around much longer. Ethan stood near the screen, remote in hand, smiling with that curated confidence he wore like cologne, manufactured, expensive but utterly hollow. Lindsay sat next to him, her hair freshly done, a new gel manicure glinting under the lights. She was glowing, the kind of glow you get when someone's told you you're the future. I sat in the second row, not by choice. No one had left me a seat in front. The meeting began with the usual parade of corporate jargon. Ethan clicked through slides filled with words like synergy, optimization, dynamic vertical integration. Then he paused. We're entering a new phase, he said, clicking to a new slide titled Strategic Streamlining. It's time to reassess where we invest our energy and our resources. The room fell still. Ethan let the silence linger, like a predator waiting for the prey to breathe. Then he continued. Some individuals have been here a long time. And yes, they've done good work. But tenure doesn't guarantee alignment. If anyone feels entitled to compensation just because they've been around for years, without adapting to the company's evolving direction, perhaps it's time they ask themselves whether this is still the right place for them. His eyes flicked to me, just for a second, but it was enough. The kind of glance that says, "This is for you." The room didn't gasp. No one said anything, but I felt it. Every pair of eyes drifting my way, some quick, some lingering, some apologetic, some relieved it wasn't them. Lindsay shifted her papers, just barely smirking. And Ethan? He moved to the next slide, as if he hadn't just gutted me in front of everyone I'd mentored, trained, fought for. I sat frozen, every cell in my body screaming. How dare he, after everything I gave, every late night, every impossible deadline met, every crisis averted before it reached his inbox. This was what I got, a public shaming masked as a strategic update. But I didn't flinch. I took notes like nothing had happened. I stayed until the end. Then I walked out of that room the same way I'd walked in, back straight, chin high, heart bleeding in silence. But something had changed. This wasn't about being passed over anymore. It was war. And I wasn't going to fight it with fire. I was going to fight it like a strategist. With patience. With precision. And when the time came, I would make sure Ethan heard everything he had refused to see. Loud, unignorable, and final. That night, I didn't go straight home. I stayed in the office long after the lights had dimmed and the hallways had emptied. I needed the silence, not the kind they had weaponized against me, but the kind I could finally claim for myself. I sat at my desk, hands still, heart racing. Then I opened my inbox. Not to work, not to delete, to remember. I scrolled past the unread proposal, past project updates, past meeting invites, until I found it. Subject: no matter what, your work doesn't go unnoticed. It was from Dr. Evelyn Park, VP of Strategic Operations at Naturatech, dated 6 months ago, just a few days after I had submitted that damned proposal. I clicked. At the bottom of the email was a line I had forgotten, or maybe buried. "Helen, if this agency ever forgets your value, call me directly. We'd be lucky to have you." I didn't cry. I froze. Then I whispered, "You saw me!" It felt like a rope being thrown to a woman drowning with a smile on her face. I hadn't even known how desperate I was for someone, anyone, to acknowledge that I still mattered. But I didn't respond. Not yet. This wasn't about escape. This wasn't about finding a new job. It was about leverage. The difference between quitting and walking away with power is the plan. So I started building mine. Over the next few days, I became a ghost with a purpose. I reviewed every email I'd ever exchanged with Naturatech. I dug up campaign decks, launch reports, client testimonials. All of it showing my fingerprints. I didn't steal. I didn't download. I didn't forward files. But I organized my truth. The proof that I wasn't just a replaceable cog. I had been the engine. Meanwhile, the office buzzed with false optimism. Ethan announced agile restructuring. Lindsay handed out vision boards for Q4. And I just smiled. Because they didn't know. They had no idea that I wasn't surviving anymore. I was preparing. 3 nights later, at exactly 9:13 p.m., I sat on my sofa with a glass of wine in one hand and my cursor hovering over the reply button in Evelyn's email. I inhaled, typed, "Hi, Evelyn. Your message meant more than you know. I'd be open to a conversation, strictly informal for now. Let me know when might be a good time. Helen." I hit send. The reply came 20 minutes later. "Tomorrow at 11 a.m. I'll send a link." My hands trembled. Not with fear, with possibility. I didn't tell anyone, didn't rehearse, didn't spiral. I simply prepared, because for the first time in months, I wasn't waiting for someone to open my email. I had opened the door myself. The next morning, I logged into the call 5 minutes early. I wore a soft gray blouse and a calm, neutral expression, the kind that says, "I'm here, but I'm not begging." At 11 a.m. sharp, Evelyn appeared on the screen, just as poised as I remembered. Sharp black glasses, silver hair swept back, and that calm confidence of a woman who had outlasted every kind of nonsense the industry could throw at her. She smiled, warm but direct. "Still keeping everyone in line over there," she teased. I returned the smile, just a twitch at the corner of my mouth. "Trying." She didn't press, didn't ask about Ethan or the disaster I was tiptoeing through. She just cut to the heart of it. "Let me be clear, Helen," she said, folding her hands. "Naturatech has been reevaluating our agency partnerships. We've noticed the decline, the shift in tone, consistency, follow-through, and frankly, we miss the way things used to run when you were leading the charge." My throat tightened. She continued, "We've been considering bringing some strategic operations in-house. And if you're open to it, I'd like to offer you the chance to build that from the ground up." I blinked. "You mean lead the division?" "Build it, let it, staff it how you see fit. You'd report directly to the C-suite. Remote first, flexible terms, and of course," she paused, her smile widening slightly, "a salary that reflects what you're actually worth." It was almost too much. Too validating. Too sudden. Too perfect. But it wasn't a fantasy. It was a mirror, finally showing me a reflection that matched what I had given for years. I didn't say yes immediately. I asked questions. I stayed measured. But somewhere in my chest, something had already said yes the moment she uttered, "We miss the way things used to run." When the call ended, I didn't dance. I didn't pop champagne. I just sat there, hands in my lap, the cursor still blinking on my laptop screen, and let the realization settle in. I hadn't been invisible. I'd been ignored by the wrong people. And now, finally, the right ones were paying attention. Later that afternoon, I pulled together everything. Not stolen files, not confidential data, just the full story, my story, the records, the decks, the before and after snapshots of campaigns I'd rebuilt from ashes. I needed to be ready, because this wasn't just an exit. It was an exodus, and I wouldn't be walking out alone. Behind me would be the weight of everything they had taken for granted. It happened on a Thursday, the kind of Thursday that looked like any other, drizzly, gray, the scent of burnt coffee lingering in the break room. No one expected the tremor beneath their feet. I was sitting at my desk, reviewing my final notes for the week, when the first email came through. Subject line: Contract termination, Naturatech. No greeting, no explanation, just one clean, cold statement from their procurement team to ours. Effective immediately. I read it once, then again, and then I smiled. Not a grin of vengeance, just the kind of small, quiet smile you wear when something inevitable finally arrives. I didn't say a word, didn't forward it, didn't react. But 20 feet away, Lindsay's screen lit up. I saw her shoulders tense. Minutes later, Ethan's door opened so hard it hit the wall. He stepped out with his phone glued to his ear. Voice hushed, movements clipped and sharp. The office fell under a strange hush. Not silence exactly, but tension, like the building had started to realize its foundation was cracking. By noon, the leadership team had huddled behind closed doors. By 2, Lindsay was summoned into the boardroom, trying to look composed as she juggled her laptop and printed talking points. And me? I typed, calmly, quietly, as if none of it involved me at all. Because they still didn't know. They didn't know how deep this would go. Naturatech wasn't just our biggest client. They were our anchor, our credibility in every new business pitch. The reason our Q2 numbers had survived a downturn. Without them, the entire operation trembled. By late afternoon, the panic had started to show. Delamar Imports went quiet. Greylight Labs requested a strategic review of their ongoing contract. Ethan passed my desk twice, didn't look at me once. I wasn't invisible anymore. I was untouchable. The next Monday, the air inside Bright Peak was heavy. No fake smiles, no small talk, just whispers and darting eyes. People walked slower. Some stared at their screens like they were waiting for something else to disappear. Lindsay's desk was cleared by noon. Rumor said she'd been reassigned to internal documentation. No clients, no campaigns, no visibility. I didn't ask, because by then my phone had already buzzed. A call from Evelyn? No, from Natura Tech's chief operating officer. He didn't waste time. Helen, we finalized the internal structure for our new strategic innovation division, he said. His voice was crisp, steady, and the decision was unanimous. A pause. We want you to lead it. I sat still. You'll build the department from scratch, he continued. You'll hire your own team. Report directly to our board. Full autonomy. Flexible location. And, of course, a compensation package that reflects exactly what you've earned. For a second, the hum of the office around me faded. This wasn't just a new role. It was validation. A position designed around my value, not in spite of it. And it had arrived not with applause, but with silence. The kind of silence I had learned to survive, and now to control. The next morning, Ethan emerged from his office like a man waking up inside the wreckage he'd created. His tie was loose. His smile, usually sharp and practiced, was cracked at the corners. He looked unfinished. He stopped by my desk, hesitated, then said, "Helen, got a minute?" I stood. No rush, no reaction, just presence. We walked into the boardroom, the same room where he once handed my seat to Lindsay without blinking. Now, it was just the two of us, the door clicking shut behind us like a lock sealing off the last page of a story. He didn't sit. Neither did I. He turned slowly, arms crossed, like he was searching for the version of me who used to say yes to everything. So, Natura Tech, he began, forcing a laugh. Do you know why they pulled out? I looked him square in the eye. I assume it wasn't the weather. That landed. His face twitched. Come on, Helen. I kept my voice level. I'm not part of their leadership team. A pause. A flicker of realization in his eyes. So, they did reach out to you. I didn't answer. I didn't have to. He exhaled sharply, pacing once. Look, I know things have been tense. I was trying to push for a leaner model, fresh talent, you know. Maybe I misread some of the dynamics. But if you have any insight, any ideas on how we might re-engage with them, I'd really value your help. That word, value, it rang so false in the air I almost laughed. But I didn't. I just tilted my head. Calm. Precise. 6 months ago, I said, I sent you a proposal outlining what I needed, what Natura Tech needed, what the entire strategic department needed to thrive. You never opened it. He blinked. You also reassigned my accounts, I continued, undermined my role, and promoted someone with no experience to replace me. Publicly. I miscalculated, he said, quietly. We both know you were central to that relationship. I stepped closer. Not confrontational, just present, grounded. I wasn't central, I said. I am. Then I added with finality, I've accepted an offer from Natura Tech. I'll be leading their new strategic division, effective immediately. His face went pale. You're serious? Dead serious. A silence stretched between us. He clenched his jaw, arms folding tighter, like he could still hold something together. You're making a mistake, he muttered. No, I said steady. You did. And with that I turned, walked to the door, and left. Not just the boardroom. The building. The chapter. I didn't clear out my desk. There wasn't much left anyway. Over the months, I'd slowly stripped it down. First by accident, then by instinct. No framed awards. No photos. No artifacts of a loyalty that had been left unreciprocated. I paused at the elevator. The hum of fluorescent lights. The soft clicking of distant keyboards. And behind it all, the slow, inevitable collapse of a kingdom that thought I was just another piece to be replaced. The elevator doors opened with a soft chime. I stepped inside without looking back. No one followed. No one stopped me. And that was perfect. I didn't want a goodbye party. I didn't want a signed card from people who hadn't looked me in the eye for 6 months. I didn't want a cheap sheet cake in the break room with "Good luck, Helen" written in blue frosting by someone who couldn't remember my last name. What I wanted was for my silence to match theirs. I pressed the button. The doors began to close. Then Helen. I looked up. It was Lindsay. She stepped toward the elevator, stopping just shy of the threshold. Her tone was cautious, not remorseful, not defensive, just unsure. "Are you leaving?" I gave a slow nod. "I am." She hesitated. Then, quieter than I expected, she asked, "Is it true? About Natura Tech?" I didn't confirm. I didn't deny it. I didn't need to. The rumor mill had done its job. She shifted awkwardly. "Well, good luck. You deserve it." That surprised me. Not because I needed her blessing, but because I never expected she had enough grace left to say it. "Thank you," I said simply. And the doors slid shut. Down I went. Through the floors I had once fought to rise in. Through the walls that once heard my ideas and later forgot them. When I stepped into the parking garage, the air felt different. Lighter, cleaner, sharper. I hadn't realized how heavy it had been to stay, to perform, to shrink myself so that others could shine brighter. No more. I drove home with no music, just the quiet hum of tires on wet pavement and the calm rhythm of a life finally shifting back into my hands. That night, I poured a glass of wine, opened my laptop, and logged into my new inbox. Helen.shaw@natratech.com, there it was. The welcome email sat at the top. "We're thrilled to have you on board. Let's build something exceptional together." I leaned back. My eyes stung not from sadness, but from something I hadn't felt in a long time. Joy. Not the joy of being praised, the joy of being trusted. Because for the first time in months, I wasn't surviving. I was starting over. And this time on my terms. 3 weeks into my new role, the first ripple reached me. It came in the form of a call, from a number I didn't recognize, but a voice I knew immediately. "Hey, Helen," he said. "It's Mark, from Greylight Labs." I smiled. Mark was a CMO I'd guided through one of the roughest product launches of his career. He didn't call for small talk. "Congrats on the move," he continued. "Honestly, we're thinking of doing the same." He didn't have to explain. I knew what he meant. They weren't just curious. They were following the work. Following me. Within days, 2 other clients, long-standing high revenue, reached out. Not with complaints. Not with urgency. Just interest. "Where did you go? Would you be open to consulting? Could we talk?" I didn't promise anything. I just listened. And with every conversation, it became clearer. The legacy they tried to erase was still very much alive. Meanwhile, word trickled in from back channels. Bright Peak was unraveling. Q4 contracts fell through. New business pitches went nowhere. Staff turnover had quietly doubled. Lindsay? She'd been moved again, this time to internal training. No clients. No launches. And Ethan? He'd gone quiet. No posts. No thought leader quotes on LinkedIn. No newsletters from the self-declared visionary. Too poetic, really. But I didn't gloat. That's not who I am. Instead, I reflected. Because here's a truth no one likes to say out loud. When you treat people like they're disposable, you teach them how to disappear. And when you push the right person far enough, you don't just lose them. You lose everything they protected, everything they held together while you were too busy promoting fresh energy. I wasn't perfect. I stayed longer than I should have. I swallowed more pride than anyone should. But I walked away with my dignity intact, and a new chapter already in motion. I used to think power came from titles, corner offices, invitations to speak at retreats. Now I know better. Power comes from knowing your worth, holding your line, and walking away when you're no longer respected. So if you've ever been made to feel invisible at work, at home, in life, just remember this. Sometimes the most powerful thing you can do is stay quiet, stay sharp, and let your exit echo louder than any scream. Because when you leave with grace and truth on your side, they don't just remember your absence. They feel it every single day.